If yesterday's nail-biter was a little too elven for you, then we got the replay for you today, you big manly man. That's right, it's the Empire of Man versus Bretonnia here today, this replay from Pigman, and we've got the Chads here, Carl versus King Lewin. Doesn't really get any better than this, to be honest. Three Empire Knights with some Hawkwind long rifles on this big open desert map should do pretty well. I've got some spears here, and Empire state troops up front with the Jade Wizard. For Bretonnia, Knights Errant on the flanks, King Lewin, as mentioned, in the sky, peasant mobs up front, backed up by men-at-arms with some peasant bows, Damsel of Life, a single Hippogriff Knight, and a single Grail Guardian, with a Knight of the Realm over on the left. So a nice balanced Bretonian composition here should be very good. But yeah, right now, let's see what the Hawklands are going to focus on. They probably should focus the archers here. I mean, it's not like they're really going to be able to get great contact on any of these cavalry units. Yeah, like right there, they can get some really good damage and potentially rout the bowmen almost immediately with just a couple of volleys, so that is definitely the right call. See if the peasant bowman leadership drops. Right now, Carl going for a couple cheeky attacks there on Lewin as the mobs begin to clash. A little bit of a lapse here allows one Knight of the Realm to get into combat against some long rifles, but quickly the Empire Knights will get in, and the Spearmen will reinforce. A little bit of a heal there on all those units, try and keep those long rifles operational. These ones are going to be focusing on the Hippos, who are also going to get a little pre-growth as they charge in, just directly busting up these defensive Empire Knights, which is definitely an interesting call. It is going to open them up to being cross-shot by the long rifles here. But again, that does mean the long rifles are not shooting those archers who are now starting to return fire. And the long rifles lacking shields, armor, and HP will absolutely get shredded by those peasant archers. Not to mention Knights Errant closing from the other side. So Pigman having to reorganize here, get his spears second line into action to screen a bit. But even still, may not be able to protect all these long rifles. Looks like some of them are getting free. Meanwhile, Lewin and Carl having an absolute scrap here. Just a cage match in the center with a little side steel chair. I guess a very flimsy, like pool noodle, to be honest, from the Jade Wizard, but that's okay. You know, every little bit helps, certainly. And right now, Hippogriff's being pushed back, taking some fairly significant damage, like half HP damage. It's pretty good, but Empire paying the price for it as some of these long rifles are also getting routed off and mostly made combat ineffective. The Empire infantry obviously was able to prevail against some of those mobs, which has kind of led to them kind of over-chasing a little bit here. Maybe an issue for Pigman, but we'll see. The Empire Knights also helping to defend. It's pretty good, but the duel between Lewin and Carl's an interesting one. Carl has an edge in some ways, but Lewin also just has like better base melee defense by 7, which is a pretty considerable amount. Not to mention, you know, Blessing of the Lady is going to further mitigate damage he takes. And Lewin is substantially tankier. Carl obviously can hit harder while Galmaras, Reichel, and Runefang are active. But Lewin's own innate regeneration means that generally he is a much tankier opponent. And I would say probably has a slight edge over Carl. Depends on a lot on how the engagements play out, and obviously support and everything else like that. But Halberdiers reinforcing here. We're going to help defend this line, and some more Hawkland long rifles trying to get free and get set to shoot here. This one here in the middle is left out in the open, and unfortunately he's going to get contacted on the charge there. But the Empire Knights are close enough, just Knights Errant, not anything too crazy. But Lewin also just kind of feasting here, trying his best to take out those long rifles. It does look like a lot of the supporting cavalry for Bretonnia is starting to get withered away. But the one Grail Guardian, of course, they are absolute beasts, and they're going to charge on through with their magical swords and their godly blessings. Carl here taking some hits, getting staggered by them, and yeah, getting debuffed by Lewin briefly there. Yeah, Lewin definitely wants to try and take this engagement if he can, with the Grail Guardians at his side against Carl. Carl does pop Galmaraz and Reichel and Runefang. That is going to offset some of the, well, I guess not Sword of Prone debuffing his melee defense. Both of them going to be hitting quite hard during this uptime. Just depends on who gets the animations, really. But thankfully, for Carl does have the halberds nearby, and more Empire Knights kind of defending here. If we take a wider view, as well as that heroic duel continues. Hippogriff's operational again, kind of bypassing defenses, going after those long rifles. A lot of Pigman's infantry also just kind of scattering Bretonian army, but also chasing to the ends of the earth, which is not necessarily ideal. Somehow one long rifle's gotten all the way over there too, which is quite impressive. But yeah, I don't know. Part of Bretonnia sort of dedicating so much time and resources to have it and chase the long rifles is opening them up to taking some hits too. They've ended up having to sacrifice a few units in some ways, but obviously from a win condition perspective, everything outside of like Lewin, Grail Guardians, and the Hippogriff Knights is really just support for those 3 units. And this is really, you know, a common way of viewing the game, especially in land battles, is the win condition, right? What is the 1, 2, 3 units on your opponent's army that will win the game from Karl's perspective, from Empire perspective? Obviously, Karl is the big one, right? But then all outside of that, to be honest, like the long rifles seem like they're a pretty big priority as well, but then you can't discount the support troops for the Empire. They do have, in some ways, some of the best support troops in the entire game. That's sort of their thing, right, is the combined arms, sort of jack-of-all-trades type feel. Obviously, they best in class at mobile firepower, but still, yeah, they have some of the best support troops in the game, so that's where that phase can end up mattering pretty significantly. It's not that the support phase doesn't matter, it's just that that's like, you know, like 80% of your units, right? And then the rest of your army, the win condition units, is like maybe 3 to 4, right? Maybe more. But here, Karl staying relatively healthy. He's also got his own healer alive, I think. But yeah, the Hochland long rifles getting wiped out, but also some units for both sides getting chased off, including potentially those Hippogriff Knights. We'll have to keep an eye on that, keeping a real wide view, because we've got the entire battlefield just filled with units all over the place right now. But yes, Empire caster still here, able to continue healing Karl, super important. Likewise, the caster for Bretonnia also still here. Those are definitely win condition units for both sides in order to continue healing their high value units, right? And as far as support goes. But yeah, a lot of halberdiers here, a lot of spearmen still. You can see Pigman's kind of trying to reorganize a little bit, trying to get some of these units back to where they can support Karl. Like, especially if Karl needs to hard land here. Right now, he did have a favorable situation, but Lewin's been kiting now and regenerating his HP and sort of refilling his abilities. And, yeah, it's going to turn soon against Karl, where he'll probably start to lose in the long term. It's definitely his thing where, like, if Karl can get engagements Lewin quick, it's definitely more so in Karl's favor than if Lewin's able to disengage, heal, and then re-engage multiple times. Obviously, he's getting great value from his passive healing. But let's see here. It's definitely a lot of game left, as there's still units all over the place. Pigman's also going to have to try and gather his scattered army back into a cohesive piece. Otherwise, they do risk getting annihilated by the mobile Bretonnian forces here. So we're going to fast forward, as it will take some time. You can see Pigman's kind of reforming his lines here to a degree, trying to defend what's left of these long rifles. They're taking some shots, not doing a crazy amount of damage to the Guardians, but, I mean, Lewin doesn't really care. There's not really a lot of mass to stop him. Karl can try and countercharge, which he does, pops his buffs, maybe gets an attack or 2 off, but credit to the Bretonnian player here. He's able to dodge fairly well. Does take a really good contact there, though. And maybe 1 or 2 more. Yeah, Galmaraz's still active. Another few seconds. There it drops. But Empire Knights also still alive, surprisingly. Really nice contact on those, on that charge there, on those spearmen. Let's see. Lewin wanting to charge down and then fainting out as the Empire has more support infantry in the area, trying to lead Karl away and astray. Meanwhile, Pigman's infantry are coming back, and there's a lot of swordsmen here with a lot of HP, which could end up mattering. It is going to be just a lot of HP for the Bretonnian player to get through here, which is definitely a thing. But Lewin and Karl trade a few blows there. Pigman's going to wisely pull away. He doesn't want to leave Karl to his fate there, especially with Sword of Crone active. Lewin does get his charge animation, though, and is able to get a few hits in on Karl while he's retreating. Yeah, the long rifles get broken, so Pigman doesn't have any ranged. Has very little mobility left, just this one Empire Knight, and the Bretonnians here could be trying to lead the Empire Knight away. But yeah, Carl here is going to hard land directly on the halberds. Exactly what he should do to try and protect. You see a little regrowth there on the Grail Guardians to try and keep them topped up. But a risky land here from King Lewin, I will say. He maybe wants to pull the Empire Knights away from his Grail Guardians so they can come in for a rear charge, which does end up kind of working out. Looks like a lot of the Empire Knight models, though, are able to pull through the halberds. And these halberds are going to be absolutely critical as this game continues to go on, especially because there's so many of them and they're still so healthy. They've got a lot of extra support here. The Spearmen obviously will help, definitely with their little bit of anti-large. Swordsmen will help less, but they are more bodies that the Bretonnian are going to have to get through, right? So we'll see. We'll get some more cinematics. Absolutely beautiful. Stand here is the Empire Infantry. Carl just chilling on the ground with them, you know. Just defends as King Lewin charges down there. The Empire Knights are perhaps in a position to try and screen the Guardians, but regardless, yeah, Carl kind of pulls through to the other side, which is maybe a good thing. King Lewin ends up taking some hits as he's chasing them, these halberds and spears, getting their extra chip damage in and contributing nicely. Carl kind of screens through the swordsman here, which is, again, going to impede the Grail Knights, Grail Guardians somewhat, and it also, again, leads to some separation, but a really nice maneuver here by the Bretonnian player to get Lewin out and just mirror exactly where Carl's going to go. Didn't get any attack animations right there. That attack animation also misses. Pigman with the beautiful landing mechanics here, just, you know, utilizing that mechanic to its absolute best, trying to keep Carl alive for as long as possible. Reichland Runefang, I haven't really mentioned too much right now. The support value, though, so far has been pretty huge. I mean, 56 melee attack on just swordsmen, right? So they actually do have enough melee attack to get some hits, even if they're not doing that much damage to the Grail Guardians, just because there's so many of them, right? We take kind of an overhead look here, like, this one Grail Guardian's fighting like 6 dudes, right? And if that they can continue to fight with those kind of odds, these Empire State troops can definitely perform, you know, up against very strong opponents. But the Emperor does fall to Carl, or sorry, to King Lewin. Carl is the Emperor, obviously, but Lewin actually routs. That is going to shut down his passive healing, of course, and get rid of his damage resistance from Blessing of the Lady. So he's down under 1,000 HP. He did rout, but could come back to perhaps cause some more terror routes for Pigman's infantry blob. For that's all he has left. No more Empire Knights, no more guns, no more Carl, just the lads. So we are going to fast forward, as this phase will take some time. Pigman's going to kind of reorganize here to give him as much density as possible, and also face kind of anti-large units in multiple directions, so that wherever, you know, the Grail Guardians or Lewin goes, they can try and mirror with mass and with anti-large. But yeah, the one unit you can see there, the swordsman exposed, just gets absolutely ripped apart. And as for the rest, the lads are just going to stand together as best they can and try and absorb these charges. Lewin does come in and get a nice snipe on the Jade Wizard here, who's not going to be doing a lot except for supporting leadership, which is pretty critical in a late stage engagement like this. But the Grail Guardian's going to continue to charge here and just, yeah, not really wanting to, well, I say continue to charge, so not really giving much of an engagement here. But we do see these Spearmen-at-Arms come back from rout very briefly and then immediately rout. And the Damsel of Life is going to move in, provide a little bit of a hammer for the anvil of the Grail Guardians. And the lads are just, you know, just doom stacking it, just absolutely doom blobbing. And although this is, you might think this is like a very like low-tier strategy, to be honest, this is probably exactly what you should do, because Empire Infantry don't have a whole lot of mass. This is really one of the only things you can do to help protect yourself against the mass. Like, if you were to spread all these units out, right, then they're just going to get run over by the Grail Guardians, and there's a 0% chance that you'll get any hits, because they'll just never get stopped. So this is really the best chance that Pigman's got to get any kind of response against the Grail Guardians. Now, you know, cycle charging rules aside, yeah. It's just, it gives them the best chance to win here, and as long as there's multi-model units alive, they're technically allowed to cycle charge. So, but look at how Pigman's kind of micro-managing, even within this blob. He actually manages to get these halberds fully faced and braced the other way, when the Grail Guardians charge in, all they're met with is steel. You know, they're just Empire courage and steel here as they try and make their attack runs. And they are going to take a little bit of hits over time. Lewin came in, tried to support, you know, tried to get a couple more terror rounds, ends up himself routing there, which is absolutely huge. Damsel comes in, also routes, and with that, the Bretonnian player decides, you know what, don't think I can cycle charge this out, maybe we shouldn't try, and hands Pigman the win by throwing in the towel. What a game, though. Absolutely incredible game, to be honest. Just the lads there, yeah, the halberds, 9,579 damage dealt, 1,800 gold value, insane performance, more than 3x, almost 4x value on just, you know, the line troop. That's one of the reasons why I love the Empires. It's just you know, regular Joes holding the line, and yet they're able to contend with all this stuff, including supernatural knights blessed by the gods with, you know, magical swords and all that, who themselves get 33,000 damage dealt and 3,400 damage value. Yeah, the hippogriffs surprisingly actually technically don't pay for themselves. 10,000 damage dealt, 1,700 damage value, so basically do, but not technically, right? Technicalities are the best. Knights Errant do pay for themselves, though. Interestingly enough, the archers, I mean, they get pretty well limited by Hawkland long rifles, who, yeah, 4,000 value on Lewin. Not too bad either, honestly. The Empire Knights, wow, they have a great performance too, helping to support against all those units. A Salinator here really went hard after the long rifles, and as a result, only really 2 of them paid for themselves. This one did okay, 657, that's not too bad. But definitely the MVP sort of ace in the hole halberd that Pigman ended up bringing was super clutch here. And the swordsmen also, you know, the fact that they just won that fight and then had more bodies to help stick around to give extra mass to those halberdiers in the late games. Obviously, if it was just the halberdiers, they wouldn't have done much. But yeah, the Empire infantry support, like I said, they have some of the best support units, most cost-effective support units in the game. They tend to do very well on that phase. So even though the win condition units for Pigman, if you want to call them that, like Carl, the long rifles, knights, all got shut down. The support phase was still able to carry because he did enough damage. Well, certainly just taking out the full support phase of Salinator here, but doing enough damage to like the Hippogriffs and King Lewin on the way that in the late game they just weren't able to prevail against this massive bodies here. So definitely a fun one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like and subscribe. Hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.